following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, your host on The People's View. The People's View is a program sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee. Go to nashuagop.org on the website and find out all about the committee and its programs. We meet the second Thursday of every month and at the Crown Plaza, and everything is on our website. So if you want to contact us, go through that and suggest things for our future programs. But tonight, we're going to talk to Doris Hohensee. Doris is an activist, and one of our programs that she's going to explain to us is the Common Core. Doris, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And I think the people will see what you mean by being an activist.
Well, I didn't start out as an activist. I started out as a mother of 6 children in Nashua. I've been here 30 years. And I got involved in education and legislation as it affected my family. But last March, I found out about this program, and it just took my breath away. I mean, I've seen problems before, but this one is bigger than anything I've seen before. But the encouraging news is there are mothers everywhere that are joining together, and we are forming networks, interstate, intercommunity, and we are transferring information. So we're getting a better picture on how to go about fixing the problem. Essentially, our state boards of education in just 45 out of 50 states have accepted this Common Core standards. And from the standards, they build a curriculum, and then they've also adopted the Smarter Balance Consortium assessments. So these assessments will grade you on how well you're implementing the standards or the curriculum. So it's it's a national program. They say that the testing is done in 2 different pieces, but it's controlled by the Department of Ed. Anytime you want to change the test, you have to get approval by the Department of Education. So as a homeschooler formally, if you control the test, you control my curriculum. So this is huge for them to say that we no longer have local control, because 4 appointed people in our State Board of Education decided that we should have Common Core in New Hampshire because, gee, there's a lot of money we could get if we do this. It's all about the children. No, it's all about the money. So we've got to get it back to focus. It's all about the children.
Right, and it's the money doesn't even come down to the local people.
It must come into at the state level, but we are told at every district level we can adopt or not adopt the Common Core. That's voluntary. I mean, it's in state law. They would be violating state law if they said you had to. Okay, so Alton just decided, there was 5 board members, and they were very brave. They thought about it, and they bucked the system, and they said, no, these aren't the best standards. We want better for our children. So they decided that we're not going to take the Common Core, because they've already been piloting it. They've had tests last year from the Smarter Balance. They never told the parents that they were. Board members didn't know that their children were taking the Common Core test through Smarter Balance.
Really?
So they find out a year later that they've already been piloting it. And you have to understand, when a test is not verified, it's not benchmarked or anything. It's just research. And according to International Research Board, which has an agreement with the U.S. Department of Education, they have to give informed consent to parents. Parents have the right to say yes or no, but if they're not informed, they didn't ever give their consent. Also the scores. The children aren't getting the scores. The parents aren't seeing the scores. In state law, we're supposed to be able to, the parents are supposed to be able to review and inspect the materials as soon as the department releases them. The department can't release them. They don't own them. Smarter Balance owns them. So we're violating all kinds of state laws. in pursuit of the money. But they want to implement this. They're field testing it this year. I think there's a school in Nashua, I don't know which one, that they're implementing it in. And there's one in Alton that they're implementing, and there's 3,000 students across the state at least that are going to have these tests. And again, it's research, and I don't know that any parents are being notified. Next year, in 2015, in the spring, it's going to go statewide.
So you're
But
saying
they're not going to be verified. So if parents don't think that these are valid, appropriate, or even objectively scored, which they're not, they have a right to opt out.
you're saying that the Nashua School Board has really adopted them and
No.
they're going to be implementing them? Or not?
Only the New Hampshire School Board has adopted Common Core.
Okay.
I don't know of a single school district in New Hampshire that has voted on this other than Alton, and
But-
they voted no.
But they're implementing it, whether
Well,
they
because it
voted on
comes
or
in
not.
through professional training. Like in Bedford, there's going to be training on the next generation science,
Right.
which is part of not the Common Core, because they changed the name. It's College and Career Ready. So it's under the same thing where it's a national curriculum and there's standards, not curriculum, they split hairs. And then there will be testing nationally or half the nation at a time, but it's all controlled by the Department of Education. And we never adopted the science
Well,
standards.
I've been to one of the meetings of the school board, or I guess it was a educational meeting for the Board of Education about Common Core. And I was confused because they're just educating the Board of Education about this, but they're doing things
The board
already?
Well, I guess I don't know who teaches who between the board and the department. The department signs these agreements with the governor. So it would be Virginia Berry, our commissioner, and Governor Lynch, now Governor Hassan, would be their signatures would be on the paperwork. They filled out in 2010 a race to the top application grant, hoping to get money. So the board, in order to up the chances of winning that federal money, they had quickly adopted the Common
see.
Core because your application is scored. And all these things that you do, like accept Smarter Balance, accept Common Core, accept the database, so they can data mine your children's private information, which is no longer protected anymore. The federal government pays the districts to collect it in a uniform manner, and then they pay them to give it over. And through the Smarter Balance testing, there's no indirection. Once you do that online test, the information goes directly to Smarter Balance. We don't even grade our own exams or assessments, they call these. So
you're
we're
saying
losing
maybe
a lot.
separate Superintendent Conrad must have some agreement that he's allowed
He's
it to
probably
come in?
gone to professional training and learned about it through the department, and he'll bring it back to his administrators. The administrators will then go in and make a presentation to the board, because the board, National Board, School Board, they don't know what it is that's being implemented.
They have a three-meeting plan, and I've been at the first meeting, and I think they're having the next week. They're having the
So it's backwards.
one.
You see, I was up in
Yeah,
January. The
that's
department
confusing,
is instructing the legislature. The legislature is supposed to make the laws. Should be the other way around, but it works in reverse. And if you go to the schools, like I know Nashua High just had an open house, and they presented it as a fait accompli to the parents. This is what we're going to do. It sounded like a great books club. We're going to read so much more. They didn't disclose that the whole grading system is going to be changed, not just in the primary grades. It's that your A, B, and C's are going to be gone. It's going to be meeting standards, exceeding standards, or below standards. It's all going to be about the standards.
Yeah, Common Core is supposed to be for English and math, right?
English language arts is one, and the math standards. So those are the first two they adopted.
And then the third one would be science?
Science is coming up. There'll be one for art. There's also one for social studies or history.
Uh-huh.
And I believe there's another one for technology and other skills in that bracket. So that's at least 6. But the whole curriculum, even when they don't have the science, you'll talk, like at the high school, I said, why are they presenting on what we're doing for science in terms of this college and career ready, which they like to use, not Common Core, because that's got a bad name. How can you do that if we haven't adopted it at the state board? Why are we professionally training them? But they're saying that just already we're just taking the idea that we get through the English and language arts to do greater, more rigorous, closer reading, clearer narrower, they have a certain number of adjectives that they just recycle and they use over and over again. They're already applying it to the other subjects without any state approval, without any district approval. It's just sort of coming in. So
well, you and I both attended a meeting last week about that Cornerstone Reese Foundation sponsored, and
right at St. Anselm's.
And two of the panelists were actually members of the board that drew
The
up Common
validation
Core.
committee.
They didn't sign it, but
No, they didn't feel, they thought they were empty skills. That's what Sandra Stotsky said.
Right.
And James Milgram on the math side, he said that the math standards would not prepare students for STEM career, STEM study in college. They were 2 years behind him.
I remember one comment he made. He said, well, one of the questions was completely wrong, and yet they wouldn't correct it because the printing's out. Well, you can always send a correction paper around to everybody.
You can't. If there's a problem with the standards or there's a problem with the test, you can't. The school board can't do it. The state school board, the governor, we can't
because
change
you don't
anything.
own it.
We don't own it. It's copyrighted. The standards are copyrighted. The public doesn't have any mechanism. This is education without representation, taxation without representation. This just comes down, and they pretend that the federal government that we got together as a clubhouse somehow, state-led, which is completely misleading because.
Well, this whole thing started with the Governor's Council, all the
the
states.
National Governors Association.
And they sort of got a donation to help fund the whole start.
They've gotten money from the Gates Foundation and various other private foundations, and the federal government with stimulus money and various money that the Obama administration has had to put towards this, like the Race to the Top. That was waving the carrot, and everybody jumped. And the states that didn't, they had a second chance with the No Child Left Behind waiver. They, again, could apply for a waiver from, the onerous ramifications of, failing or not meeting yearly annual improvement to get into this new program, which is even worse. It's, again, the test and punishment. You take the assessments. Now, if you don't do well and your school doesn't do well, they can rate your school and decide whether it's a focus or a priority school, whether it needs help and remediation, whether they eventually need to take over your school. If your teachers are not effective, their students aren't scoring well, and it's not just teachers, it's teachers, principals, librarians, and guidance counselors. They can replace them. They can send the teachers to someplace else where they need them. So if they can't get rid of them, they can at least put them off in the side. They're going to.
Who would do this? The state?
I would. It's very confusing because there's no guidebook. It just sort of comes at us. We don't really know what we're fighting, but in state statute, if you didn't meet your annual yearly improvement, the state would come in and remediate you, and there's certain priority and focus schools that exist, and Nashua has 1 and Manchester has 7.
Is that the same thing that they did under No Child Left Behind?
It's pretty much the same thing. They just went in with the legislation and they took one word out and they put the other word in. So it's the same test and punish, but the controls are a little bit different. Now, under the Department of Education, there's this new division of instruction that was not created by statute. There's 4 divisions in the department, created by statute, 21N, and they removed one and created a new one and gave it a lot more power. And this is the one that's controlling the Common Core.
I see.
And there's 6 regional offices in New Hampshire. Who's funding them? Who set them up? Who established them? But they're there to help us. So maybe when a lot of us fail, the state can't deal with it all. Maybe you'll go to your regional office, see, and then you'll regionally, and that's what Heather Gage, the director of this division of instruction, said, that we are going to implement them through our regional offices. Now, why didn't the legislature get involved?
So
it's a little bit of an overreach.
You think a number of legislators legislators want to do something about that in the next year?
I think they were clueless. I mean, the parents were clueless. All of a sudden, it comes at us. Like we had 3 bills last year, and they were halfway through the legislature before we tied it together what they were. And one of them was to make sure that teacher evaluations is associated with the scores by a factor of 20%. That's huge. I mean, it could be union busting. And I just don't think if you're going to bust a union, that's the way to go about it. I mean, covertly, secretly.
Well, there's another thing that bothers me even more is that you're saying that everybody gets the same standard. And there should be some kind of variation depending on the skill level of the child. No?
I don't know what they're going to do. These are supposedly standards that everyone's going to have to be college and career ready, and those experts told us last week that they will prepare us for a nice community college, if that, but certainly not in any of the STEM subjects.
So what about the children
science,
that aren't
engineering, math,
oriented to
technology.
college or community college? What about the
They're
ones that
supposed to
want
be
to go
career
through a
ready.
trade?
They're just this.
Does career mean trade too? Trade career?
I guess so. It used to be that we educated kids to take part in our government. To be citizens, to understand how self-government works. We're not self-doing anything. We're losing local control of our own schools. It's coming down from on high. We're losing our whole...
And it's almost like it's an independent organization that's doing it.
Well, Achieve Inc. supposedly owns the copyright, or is it the National Governors Association in collusion with the chief state supervisors, these trade organizations that came up and rubber stamped the standards that Achieve Inc. Published. So whatever it is, it's like we did not vote to say we don't want local control anymore. And Virginia Barry has no right to say, well, the districts don't need to control their own schools. I'm deciding to hand it over to somebody else. Don't worry, it's a big relief. You won't have to do half the work you're doing now. So, do we write her a thank you note?
Well, one of the other things that I heard at that meeting last week was that they didn't get any real input from the colleges. You know, these are the people that they're supposed to be preparing the children for, and yet they got no feedback on what they were looking for out of the education of the elementary school.
Well, my understanding is the math is down. I heard that, see, David Coleman, who was the head of Achieve Inc., or in founding these, or drafting these standards, is now over at the College Board, where he's aligning the SATs, the ACTs, the APs. Well, they may not need the AP calculus any longer if we've just lowered the standards. Maybe they'll have AP algebra, because they're not giving the full math courses in the standards that we used to have. Heck, they're taking cursive out. Now, if I'm going to write you a check, would you like an X or should I print it? I mean...
Well, that's another aspect of it, too. Aren't they requiring certain amounts of instrumentation and stuff that go along with this?
There's a big expense. The technology needed, because the tests are adaptive. If you're going along and you're scoring well, it's going to get harder and harder. If you're doing a lot of things wrong, it's going to direct you to an easier test. And they do this with the GREs. Like my son took the GREs, and that's exactly how they're designed. So computers are wonderful to do that, except that all the information doesn't go to the Department of Education, the Department of Labor for life. But these tests...
So in a way, you're sort of might be dumbing down instead of educating up.
Well, they won't
sort
say.
of a
They
common
keep
standard,
saying they're more rigorous.
A lower standard.
They're self-endorsing them to say that they're clearer, deeper, more rigorous, but it's not verified. They're untested.
So nobody challenges him on this?
Do you have as much money as the Gates Foundation? Do you have as much money as the Department of Education down in Washington? They get stimulus money. What do you get?
Yeah.
So,
well, maybe we'll have to get Bill Gates on for us a visitor to ask him those questions.
He's been paying money to various organizations to support. There's, like, if you go out there and do some research and look at who's a proponent, and then look at who Bill Gates supports financially, makes donations to, it's usually a one-to-one correspondence. But there's an equally bigger network of parents. And if you look on Facebook, there's Stop Common Core in New Hampshire and in all the other states. And so we're teaming together, mothers from state to state, and we're exchanging information. Like, we're figuring out that they have ambassadors. The federal government offers these, I don't know, scholarships or whatever to these good teachers, and they become ambassadors. And here in New Hampshire, we call them Teachers of the Year. So they're getting paid by their district and the federal government. So who is their loyalty to? We don't know. And they come in and they're spokesmen for it, and they can critique a district, and they can report back on how well or how not well they are. So is somebody watching the districts, making sure they behave? Are we setting up an infrastructure for this? I mean, there's just a lot of things that we're not given the game plan of what they intend to do with any of this. It's just coming down. And we find this out. So then they say, oh, well, go look at this program. So you look at the website, oh my golly, there it is. And we don't know. It's not coming through our state legislature. It's just appearing.
So hopefully we can get back control somehow. You said that several states have not accepted this. Is Massachusetts
Alaska
one of
never
them?
accepted it. Texas never accepted it. Virginia never accepted it. And I think it's Nebraska.
Okay.
Wisconsin or Minnesota, one of those states only accepted one of the two. And there's a lot of states, 25% of the states are now pushing back in one way or another, either wanting a moratorium on the test. In New York, they went from 57% proficiency to 31%, so they're like devastated. There were many people boycotting it. There are superintendents that are just, you know, they want to protect their teachers. They don't need this. This is ridiculous. So some of them want boycotts on the test. Some want moratoriums on the test. Some want to pull out of the standards. Some want to, are pulling out of like the consortiums. Florida was the fiscal agent. There's one fiscal agent for each of the two consortia, and they just pulled out. They were the lead state in Florida, and they pulled out. They had an executive order out of Maine, and he was a proponent, but they decided they were going to do a petition, and apparently he just decided that he would listen to the people. Isn't that nice?
One of the persons on the panel, again at the meeting we went to, said that she helped set up the standards for Massachusetts, and
Yes,
that Massachusetts,
Sandra Stotsky.
yeah, is Massachusetts then going to follow those standards?
They were bought out, federal money. They have adopted Common Core. Their state school board has. I don't know what each individual district is doing, and hopefully there's some people will stand up and review them for themselves, like they did in Alton. I mean, but in Alton, they're saying, okay, if Massachusetts was #1 in the country and the world, why don't we start by looking at the best standards? So hopefully they'll take the best standards in and say, okay, let's just use this as a starting point, figure out, do we want these, do we want something else, and start comparing for themselves. And in the meantime, use what they've got instead of the money that we're going to spend. And when you adopt it, you can't say, if a district says, okay, we're adopting it, it's no longer an unfunded mandate. You voluntarily embraced
Adopted
it.
yeah.
So all of these costs you own. So hopefully you're getting a lot of money for it, but you're really just losing a lot of governance, because if your students do bad and as these regulations tighten up, we don't own our own schools.
As a past legislature, I know that's one of the big rallying calls, unfunded mandates. And what you're saying is effectively this is an unfunded mandate, but they snookered the people by saying, you want to adopt this, don't you? And they adopt it. And
it's
then
voluntary standards, but the assessments, statewide assessments, are in state law. We're supposed to take the statewide assessment that the board adopts, and they adopted Smarter Balance. So, and the cost of this whole program, I mean, some people say it's $100 million or more, but these are just lay people guessing because they refuse to do any fiscal analysis. There is no fiscal impact for any district, the state, anybody. Now it's like giving your school board, giving the school administrators a blank check. Well, let's go ahead with this. We don't know the cost to the taxpayer, but we'll do it anyway.
So it does sound like you're going to be a busy person, an activist, in trying to
I'm hoping that a lot of
educate
mothers
these
will join
people.
us, and they are, from town to town, because once they learn, they're as matter because it's, you know, it's their district.
So you have a website, and can you tell us
New
how
Hampshire Families for Education. So if you look at www, use the initials or the name, New Hampshire Families for Education, nhffe.org, .net, .com, you should find us. And we've got a lot of information on the website. Educational information, if you want day-to-day impact stuff, go to Facebook. We've got a page there. And Stop Common Core in New Hampshire has a Facebook page. That's where we turn around instant information about meetings that are coming up, things that you can do to help.
And if people want to communicate with you, how do they reach you?
They can email me, my name, doris.hohensee @myfairpoint.net.
Okay, and I think that'll appear on our
It should.
screen, and people can pick that up and get in touch with you. And you're looking for people throughout the state.
I want everybody to start looking at their own district, see what their district is doing, and seeing what we can do to help them become better educated on what's going on, and then let them decide for themselves whether they want to work with us and protect local control, or whether they're ready to sit back and have it all done for them.
This sounds like it might be a topic for the coming election. Is
hope
six
so.
people from the Board of Education that are running for the seats,
Right,
for 4 seats, I believe.
right.
And I guess maybe people should contact them and see what they think about
They
this.
should. I mean, the privacy violations alone, we have a Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. It was passed decades ago, but the Obama administration has gutted it, allowing them to take all our student information, private student information, and use it for whatever reasons. And in there, I mean, they're collecting 400 data points per student. Your religion, your political affiliation, your income, the child's health, his discipline records, all this stuff that's not, I mean, medical records alone under HIPAA have far more protection. If they're on your student record, they can give them out to anybody. I don't know if that it matters, but it might matter, and parents might want to be concerned because this is going to follow the child from
400
kindergarten
data points.
through the workforce, and they're going to give it around all over. So maybe we want to protect just our records and make sure that, say, the Smarter Balance test, we just do them on paper, we grade them here, and give them the aggregates. They don't need to know Johnny did this, Susie did that.
Right.
If they're just wanting results, it's a question 2, this many right or wrong. But they don't need to see what Johnny and Susie do. That's local. That's our business. So we could tighten that up.
See.
And the tests themselves, these are research. Until they're verified, parents do not have an obligation to send their child. They should be getting informed consent, permission from the parents to participate, and they're not. So parents need to wake up and say, these are my rights. I want to review and inspect the previous ones. I want to see what this is. And they shouldn't have subjective questions on there because our state law says they have to be objectively scored. They're putting, and we had a fight over Senate Bill 48 last year about the student dispositions, whether we're just going to evaluate or measure skills and knowledge or dispositions. That's the student's behavior, his attitudes, his beliefs. They're scoring on that. We took it out of our state law, but we don't control the test. It's still on the test. So how do we can't get it out. It's woven in there. So what do? We can't control the test? Do we take them at all? It's got to follow state law, objectively scored. We have a problem.
Sounds like it. Well, maybe people ought to attend the school board meetings and find out, ask those questions. I understand that they're still training the Board of Education on what this whole program is.
Well, the Board of Education gave it to us, but the school boards
No, but I'm in the local board.
Oh, the local school boards, yeah, they're training them. There's a program up in Bedford on the 30th. It's open to the public. I could put it on the website or on Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't have the details in front of me, but they're going to educate, Virginia Berry, our Commissioner of Education, is going to educate the boards as to what they should be doing to implement Common Core and Smarter Balance. They don't present both sides. They present, this is wonderful. This is more money for the state, not your loss of governance.
It sounds like Obamacare in a way. You get a big bill with a lot of things in it, and all of a sudden you're finding out it's really costing you a lot more than they told you.
Yeah, let's just adopt it. We'll find out down the road how it goes.
And that's what I think they're pushing.
Then once it's entrenched, and that's what they tried to do in Manchester last night. Let's just run this as a pilot program. But there were 50 people in that room, and all but 3 that spoke out were against it. So that pilot program went down.
So it went down?
It went down in flames. So they sent the whole issue to the full board. So now 15 members instead of 5 have to deliberate. And as the mayor said this morning on the radio, I don't know that the board is prepared to do this, or, well, they better be. Because this is a big issue. This isn't just an academic issue. This is a political issue. Who controls? This is our right as parents to control and direct the education of our children. If we give it over to somebody else and we have no control over it, you're stripping us out of our rights.
That's one of the biggest things that I heard when I was up there in Concord, is that we want to have local control over things like education. And it seems like what you're telling me is we're not going to have any if we go along with it.
Well, I'm hoping that people wise up before they learn the hard way just how hurtful it could be if somebody's calling the shots and there's nothing you can do. The kid has to attend, and they're indoctrinating your kid in a way that you feel is inappropriate, and you can't do anything to stop them. I mean, that would be a sorry situation. So at this point, we have to fight to keep it local so that we can
Well, I guess the people
Work
have to
with our
yeah,
districts.
the people have to get active and
They have to
contact you, contact their school board.
They have to see
talk
what's
to 'em,
coming.
see what's happening.
Yeah.
And we'll see if we can follow up on this as we go along, especially towards the election in
Towards the election.
6
towards,
weeks away, I think it is,
Yeah,
something
in November.
like
And then also the legislation. There's going to be some good legislation
that. Yeah,
that will need input,
well, coming out.
where we rally
First of the
around
year.
our rights to say, okay, even if our district adopts this and we're stuck in this, the parent still has rights.
Right.
the parent
certain
doesn't
controls,
believe,
certain things that
we can opt
come along
out.
statewide by legislation, and maybe correct that other thing about the Board of Education having a new department.
That we want a study
Statewide.
committee on that. We want to investigate where they think the authority came, how it came about, because it's been a while since this has been set up this way, and how did it start? Is this lawful, and are these applications that they're filling out promising that every district will adopt Common Core in 3 waves? There'll be the first and second and third wave of people getting on board. When they walk around, and the same persons that signed with the U.S. Department of Ed that will do it says it's voluntary. Now, I don't even know.
Well, it's complicated. Let's see
Yeah,
how it
it's
plays out.
complicated.
And we'll keep a watch on it, and I'll talk to you, and they'll talk to others and see what we have here in Nashua.
Okay,
And thank everybody for listening in. And don't forget, the program's sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee at nashuagop.org. Please contact us if you have any questions. Thank you very much for listening in, and thank you, Doris,
You're
for
welcome.
all the
Thank you.
information.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.